Hi there. Thank you so much for tuning in today for the second part in our human trafficking series. I am so thankful to be joined here today by Linda Douglas. She is the Trauma Informed Service Specialist for the New Hampshire Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, working to enhance the capacity of programs of the coalition in local communities to address the complex needs of victims with responses to trauma. She's been training statewide and nationally for the past 12 years. And I'm also joined here today by Naomi Hall. She is the head science teacher at Nashua High School South and an ambassador of hope with Shared Hope International. Naomi raises awareness about human trafficking through presentations for the New Hampshire Human Trafficking Collaborative Task Force and Shared Hope, and has done research on the topic of domestic minor sex trafficking and the implications for high school. I am going to pass it off to Naomi to speak first on the topic. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Molly. So as Molly said, this is the second part in a series of trainings. In the first part, we defined what human trafficking is and what it looks like in New Hampshire. And in this session, we'll look at the risk factors, the recruitment and control tactics, and indicators. So I'd like to start off with a quote. And this one just really rings true for educators. We know that schools can and should be safe places for students, and even more so for students whose lives are otherwise characterized by instability and lack of safety and security. Everyone, and we do mean everyone who is part of the school community, has the potential to be an advocate for children who have been exploited. First, however, the school community members must learn the factors that make students vulnerable to trafficking and how to identify the warning signs. So that's exactly what we're going to do today. And let's take a look at the risk factors. So really, every student has vulnerabilities and risk factors. These are just some that make the students extra vulnerable, whether it's a lack of family and social support. They may be drug and alcohol involved in misusing those items. Also, many victims of sex trafficking, human trafficking have had some experience to physical or sexual abuse, some form of abuse in their past. They also may be homeless or missing youth, and this also includes the children who have been involved with the child welfare system, maybe in foster care. Also, maybe they have been involved with the juvenile justice system. So that also tends to make them more vulnerable to trafficking. LGBTQ plus youth are also highly vulnerable just due to the nature of their situation and the questions that they're asking and seeking acceptance. They have extra vulnerabilities there. And financial insecurity, youth who come from a background of poverty, lacking that financial stability. They may be prone to either sex trafficking or labor trafficking. So these just make our students a little bit more vulnerable, and are things that we want to watch for with our students. And those are things that we try to support as well in the school situations, and schools try to provide support there. So those are things to watch for. But we also want to look at the tactics of traffickers. And traffickers will use different tactics, but there are some commonalities to what they do. One of the most common is just they're going to build a relationship and build trust with the youth, and then they will exploit that trust and exploit the youth. One of the ways they do that is through building a romantic relationship with the youth and really developing that trust and becoming a partner and a protector, and then they exploit the youth. Another tactic they use is false advertising. One of the things that I often say is if it's sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So advertising for jobs, maybe misrepresenting the terms and conditions of employment, the role, the wages, the educational opportunities. It may sound fantastic and then find out later it's not what it was represented to be. Unfortunately, many youth are trafficked by a family member or a caregiver. Often it's someone that they know. It's not what we see in the media of abductions and things like that. Trafficking tends to be done more by people that the youth know. So unfortunately, family members will traffic their children cousins, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, for money, for drugs, for rent. Also, friends may be used in trafficking. Traffickers can be a variety of ages, but traffickers do sometimes use high school students to be their recruiters, to kind of scope people out and recruit them for the traffickers. So friends are another avenue and tactic that traffickers use. Messaging apps, social media, video games, these kind of all fall into the same area of using online resources to build that relationship, build trust, and then exploit that relationship. Online trafficking has really grown and is a main area of recruiting for trafficking. So any of those messaging apps, you can message through social media, and the chat function in video games are all places that traffickers are going to kind of be lurking, recruiting, watching. And so that's where we need to be teaching our kids to be careful with who they're messaging and what they're saying. But we also need to look at the indicators and the red flags. Here's some general indicators that we have. Looking to see a student might be depressed, anxious, visibly stressed, and they might have low self-esteem. And these tend to be changes that you see in a student over time. Their attendance might be very spotty. They might run away from home. They might have a lot of unexplained absences. You might notice some sudden changes. Maybe their clothing is no longer appropriate to the season, to the situation. Maybe their behavior changes. Or even their relationships and friendships, what circle of friends they're hanging out with. You might notice some inconsistencies when they're describing or recounting events, that the story is a little bit different each time. They also might express some concern for their safety of their family, that they can't say too much, that their family might be harmed in some way. Or also they might not be in possession of their own ID or their own money, especially as we're looking at older youth in high school, those of driving age and working age. They might not be in possession of that. But we also have some physical indicators. I'll hand that over to Linda.
So we also, like Naomi said, we want to be aware that these are changes in behavior. Sometimes we see a lot of these behaviors in teens in general. Particularly here we have falling asleep in class or just an unusual lack of energy or fatigue, but this is a change of behavior over time. You may also see some signs of physical abuse or sexual abuse, or signs that they've been physically restrained or confined. Those can be bruises, burns, black eyes, broken teeth, a lot of scars. There can also be evidence that they have an infection that could easily be treated with a physical or checkup, but they haven't been to the doctor and they're still showing signs of having this infection. They also will reflexively resist being touched. They'll just sort of pull away if somebody's approaching them. And then they may also appear hunger or malnourished. They just have no lunch or money for food. So they're displaying a number of things over a period of time. And so some of the indicators that they could be trafficked are if you hear that they're dating a new, significantly older person, that someone is suddenly talking about this new person and you find out that they're quite a bit older. Or they suddenly have a lot of new clothes and items that there's no explanation for how they managed to obtain these, because you know that the family's income is low and there's just no availability for them to be able to obtain these. They also can appear really scared or secretive when they're answering their cell phone, or they may even have more than one phone. They may have their original personal cell phone, but then there also could be a second phone that the trafficker is using to contact them. And they also get very nervous if they're unable to answer that phone or have access to that phone. And so there also may be a change in their sexual behavior. It's unusually promiscuous, and they're referring to sexual situations, either things that happened in person or that they saw on social media. There's also a possibility that they could have a tattoo or branding. And sometimes this is difficult because traffickers will have a tattoo that's put on, but it could be something that it really seems fairly normal for a teenager, but they may have somehow designed this tattoo in a way that it identifies this particular person as being a member of their stable or group of kids that they are currently trafficking. Then there's also some indicators that show this teen is being trafficked for labor. They're working very long hours, and so that's where you'll see that tiredness, and they're getting very little pay, or they're only getting tips, and that they're not allowed breaks. And teenagers don't always know what the laws are in regards to labor, so they may be talking about this, and that will give you a hint as to what's going on. They may be employed, but they don't have a work permit, a school authorized permit, and they're clearly working outside the hours and the roles allowed for students. They're also really concerned with pleasing that employer or deferring personal or educational decisions to their boss. It's just, I need to check in with my boss. I need to ask my boss if that's okay. And they're also reluctant to say where they live or work because they may actually be living at the place that they're working. So we'd like to help the teens be able to figure out whether or not this job is legitimate. And Naomi talked about a couple of these, but it's about, is the pay reasonable for the job? Are they actually getting paid? Is it easily verified through doing some checks if they have a legitimate website, if there are other people that you know who are employed there? Whether or not there's been references asked for, or they're just saying, hey, we've got this job for you, you can start immediately, and nothing's done about that. Was there an actual job posting? Has this person, is this person who's doing the interview asking for a lot of personal information, like who are your friends, and names of your family, and just a lot of things that are normally asked for in an interview. And so it's about helping be prepared and understand that, just like Naomi said, if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. So that ends that. And I really invite you to take a look at the human trafficking website, which will be posted underneath this video. And also be sure to check out part 3 of this series that goes further into information that you need to know on human trafficking and students. Thank you very much.